All hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next December 2nd, we're going to have a talk about income inequality. And a lot of us that are working on this, and there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us that are working on this presentation, have read over books, and we're going to give you different ways of looking at income inequality. And mine is going to be based on economics. And this is a book by a Nobel Prize winner for economics, Joseph Stiglitz. And I'll be probably the last person to talk, but I'm going to talk why for this social science of economics, it makes sense to take care of the lower 99% of the population versus the very, very rich. So it benefits the very rich also. So anyway, I think it'll be really interesting because people are going to come that are going to talk about the religious aspect of wanting to take care of the poor and, the very desperate condition that the poor are in. But I will try to be more on the science side of why it makes sense to have a more efficient economy and a fairer economy, and why we want to look at democracy. So this book tells you that January 6th was going to happen. It tells you that we're going to lose our social fabric, and we're going to have a problem just like that. And this was, put out in 2012. So I found that just kind of just shuddered when I just was reading about what he was talking about, and it's going to happen to our democracy. So then I want to know from you all if you would be interested in finding out about the MEF program here in Menominee. I could try to get that going for February. The MEF program that the police have.
A problem, right?
It's a problem, but they have a wonderful program here that I don't know the details of it. And this is a discovery for me also, to have these people from our city and people from our county come and talk to us and tell us what they provide for us. With the MEF program, it's being advertised all over our country as a way to handle the MEF problem. So I would like to hear what they're doing. So Eric Atkinson and Randy Kanak have been very instrumental in getting that going. And anybody else know anything about the MEF program they want to say?
I can give you some people to talk to.
Great.
Works at the jail, that has gone through the whole thing. She's very aware. Be a good person.
Okay, we'll email back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. All right, well, we're very lucky to have our emergency team that is from Dunn County, Melissa and Kristen. And I don't really know too much about either one of you, although Kristen comes to community conversations. She's one of us. So if you could just introduce yourselves and let us know a little bit about you and your department. Okay, and then you can just go through with your planned preparation.
Okay. Hi everyone, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I'm Kristen Bunch, and I do come to community conversations. I'm at the library quite a bit, and I do work for emergency management. And so I just thought that this would be a great opportunity for us to come here, talk a little bit about what emergency management does, talk about our roles, and then towards the end we're going to talk a little bit about preparedness. And what I think we'll do is we'll probably go through both of our presentations and then maybe take questions at the end. We're going to try really hard to make sure we have time for questions at the end. Okay? Do you want me to introduce you? This is Melissa Gilgenbach, and she is the Director of Dunn County Emergency Management and Communications. And so the and communications part that refers to our dispatch center or our 911 center. That might be a little more familiar term. So she is the director of that department as well. Yep, so today we're just gonna talk a little bit about our roles, what we do, what would an emergency or disaster look like, and what might be our roles in that, okay? And I did just sort of introduce us already. There is another member of our team, Jason Spetz. He is not here today. He is off doing a program about radio communications, is that it? So there's one other member of our team who could not be here today. Oh, and I'm the program assistant.
Thank you very much for coming today. We do really appreciate it. How's my volume? Good? Okay, thank you. I have a radio voice. Dispatching for 30-some years helps with that radio voice. So yeah, like Krista mentioned, we're just going to go through a little bit of a program here today, and then I'll give you guys a chance to ask some questions. So Dunn County belongs to what we call a region for emergency management agencies within Dunn County, and we're kind of in that orange color. If Krista, you want to kind of point to us there, we're in the orange color, and there are 13 counties in our region plus one tribe. It's the Ho-Chunk Nation tribe that joins us in our region. So each region has their own regional director that we kind of work directly with, and they report to the state for us. So yeah, we're kind of in that region, all of our neighbors. A lot of similar counties in our region, but then you know, see that smaller county like Pepin County is just a little bit smaller. But it is a good region, and we have a lot of different things that we deal with. You know, you see the counties along the river there, they have a lot of different things maybe that they deal with that we don't here in Dunn County. So we do learn a lot, even just attending our regional meetings and learning what they do in their counties. So we're just going to go over real quickly some of our roles and responsibilities. We coordinate and assist developing plans for the county, city, village, and the local townships within Dunn County. We also direct and participate in different trainings or exercises. Some of the exercises that we have done are work with some of the larger facilities within Dunn County, 3M, ConAgra, those types of things, and work through exercises maybe with their plan that they have with some of the chemicals and stuff on site. We do outreach activities, which today is an outreach activity for us. Attending, you know, different community events. I know we have displays here in the library once a month, different things like that. So it's just to get our word out of what we do, and then two, how you as community members can be prepared. We assist our county governments and also the city with COOP-COG plans, and that's just basically continuity of operations, just making sure that in an emergency, those departments can continue to run so that we can continue to serve the community. Grant maintenance, our office, the Emergency Management Office, is required by statute to have an office in each county, and therefore then we do receive some grant funding. We participate in emergency or disaster response if needed, and then also recovery. We've seen, you know, some disasters in our region, flooding, tornadoes, things like that. And so we assist during and then after recovery on how can we recover from this and build back better so that one, maybe this doesn't happen again, or that we're more prepared. We manage and monitor the Emergency Operations Center. I know if you've you know, heard of some of the larger disasters that have happened in our country. Basically, the Emergency Operations Center is kind of where everybody meets and there's decisions made and things like that. So we do manage and operate that. We have a mobile command center. It was purchased years ago with some Department of Homeland Security funds, and so that vehicle is under our department. And we definitely do a lot of facilitating, our working relationships with other departments, not just within Dunn County, but within the city and in villages and things like that, and other organizations. We're going to rely heavily on community organizations and different things like that during an emergency. So the head of emergency management is not just a Dunn County role. Each city, village, or township out in the rural Dunn County should have an emergency manager. And that emergency manager should or could direct their training programs and exercises like we talked about earlier. They're going to participate in those, and those emergency management heads within those communities can definitely lean on our office, and they do, and we reach out to them periodically to try and help them with different things, training, maybe involve them in some of our exercises and things like that. So basically, number 3 is kind of where we come in. Let's just pick a township out in the rural, the township of Stanton. If they have an emergency out there that they can't handle themselves, they're going to reach out to us. And Kristen, Jason, and I are going to do our best to help them with any support, any equipment, anything that they may need. No, you're fine. So emergency plans, we talked about those already. We have several in our office. And emergency operation plan is kind of our overall umbrella plan that covers a lot of our things and has a lot of different annexes is what we call them. Off-site plans. So as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned like 3M, ConAgra, Phillips Plastics, some of the different facilities, we call them, in Dunn County that have hazardous substances. We have off-site plans for those facilities so that we know what they have in their facility. And then together we write a plan on how we would react if something was needed, if our assistance was needed at their facility because of a spill or something like that. So we do have those, and we review those at least every 2 years. Kristen just finished up with one batch not too long ago, and she's in the middle of another batch right now. So how many plans, off-site plans do we have, Kristen?
So we currently have 23 off-sites plans, so that means that there's 23 facilities in Dunn County that have substances of interest to us. And then we also have reporting facilities. They are a little bit of a notch down of planning facility, but we have 68 of those.
So yeah, and it is a job, and things change, companies change, they improve the way they do things. Maybe their chemical lists have changed, and so they may drop off, which we just recently had. But we've added, 4 new facilities just in the last year. So things change. School response plans, we work with the schools, and we have, the Sheriff's Office has a meeting called the Safe Schools meeting, and we meet a couple times a year, and they do write plans for their schools, and we assist with that if we can, and we definitely keep those on file in case there is an emergency in one of our schools. The countywide hazard mitigation plan, we review that every 5 years. That is a large document. It is on our website if anybody wants to take a look at it. As I mentioned, it's done every 5 years, and it goes through and it lists all of the main concerns of hazards that could affect Dunn County. Is it, a natural disaster? Is it severe weather? Is it blizzards? It's kind of ranked by the towns or the county, village, townships. We go through and we meet with all of those, and then we kind of rank what our concerns are and what may happen in Dunn County, and then where some of maybe our vulnerabilities are. And that's all that's in that document. And actually we'll start the process here shortly. I think the plan that we have currently is good till 2025. So we'll be going through that and updating it. And it does change, all the time. You think, well, we're Dunn County, we have severe weather. It's a concern. But I think the last time, one of the concerns that kind of came up was more cyber attacks, and we do know that is a concern. So that's something that probably was in the last plan that probably wasn't in the plan before that, because it's become more of a concern. Yeah, so yeah, the municipal emergency operation plan, which is up at the top, that, like I mentioned, every municipality should have their own emergency manager, so they should write their own emergency operation plan. It could be 1 page. Ours, the Dunn County one, is not 1 page. It is a rather large document, and it encompasses, what would we do for the whole Dunn County. If the Township of Stanton writes their own, it's only what is going to happen or what they need to accomplish in their own township. We have a few dams here in Dunn County, and so we do have a plan with some of those dams. We have the Xcel Energy dams in Cedar Falls and here in Menominee. And then we also have the O'Galley Dam, which I believe Dunn County used to own. I'm not sure if they still do. I should know the answer to that. But yeah, so we have plans on file for those if there ever is an emergency, and what we would do and how it could affect the community members of Dunn County. And as we mentioned earlier, our COOP COG, which each department in Dunn County should have a COOP COG plan. They should identify what core responsibilities they have as a department that we need to keep running. What do we need to do in an emergency? And depending on the emergency, that could change. But what would they do if they had to evacuate their building? But they still need to be available for the community members and serve the community members. So we're actually in the process of redoing that plan and hopefully making it a little bit more robust and making it a better plan.
What does that COOP COG stand for?
Continuity of operations.
Yeah, so continuity of
Operations or continuity of government. Yep.
Plan.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. There is a new process that the state of Wisconsin has asked us to do, and it's called IPP, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Kristen. She loves IPP, so we'll just let her go over this slide.
All right, so this is a new concept for counties in Wisconsin, and this is going to be sort of our generator of a lot of our activities that we have going on. So it is a whole community preparedness concept. So it's not about somebody down in Madison saying everybody should do this or all the counties should do that. But this is sort of gives us the freedom to maybe identify directly in our individual counties what we do well and what we don't. What do we have here as a threat? What do we not? And this is actually a grant requirement for us to do this, but so again, it is a whole community process. And it's designed to find, again, what we as each individual counties need to work on. It's going to involve leadership of all types, response entities, so fire, police, EMT, county departments, and you as community members. So, and again, this is the first year we're doing this, so we are going, it will have to be reviewed every year, and every year we plan for the next 3 years. Okay, so, you know, we're coming towards the end of it now, and we've identified some things. What we did this year is we did get a hold of our county departments, and we had them fill out a survey, and it was about, you know, how they felt about their department and how they were prepared for an emergency and how that related to the people that they serve within our community. And so that sort of pulls in the whole community aspect. So we've come up with some ways that we can improve our preparedness, how we can help the Dunn County departments improve. And then we have sort of a 3-year plan that we're gonna start and making these improvements. So then at the end of the year, or at the beginning of next year, it starts all over again. And we will decide who is going to be sort of our targeted group, or that sounds kind of terrible, but what direction we wanna go. Do we wanna see, you know, which departments need more assistance? How can we make it better? And you know, there might be at some point where we figure out through our planning that, you know what, we're doing pretty good with this, whatever that might be. We're doing well on outreach. We're getting out to different community members. We're presenting through different groups, age groups. We did some presentations with little kids this past summer, and that worked out great. And so maybe through this IPP planning, we might say, you know what, we're good there. Let's move on to something else. But again, this gives us the freedom to really sort of target Dunn County and its direct needs. Okay, so we did talk about our mobile command earlier, and so here she is in all of her infinite glory. She's large. She doesn't go very fast. She's interesting to drive, but there she is. That's we call her MC1, or the mobile command unit. We just had to include her in. But all right, so another thing that we do is we participate and direct in exercises. So what is an exercise? It is basically where we get together, we dream up something really bad, and then we ask people to figure out what they would do if that thing actually happened. And that is basically an exercise. However, when we have exercises, it's not just me, Melissa, and Jason sitting in a room talking about it. We get involved with law enforcement, EMS, fire, hazmat, school districts, different leaderships from whatever groups may be affected by this scenario that we came up with. And there's 3 different levels of exercises. So we have a tabletop. So that would be people sitting in a room talking about and reacting to the scenario that we created. We also have a functional, which is a little more where people are up and moving and reacting to each other's, or reacting to other people's actions. It's a little more involved, there's a little more movement. And then we have full scale. Full scale would mean involving equipment, large equipment, being outside, doing actual rescues, or any sort of reaction to the scenario that we have. And the importance behind our exercises is that we do have lots of different disciplines involved. and quite often lots of different jurisdictions. So it's not just Menominee Fire Department. It is all of our fire departments. And it is our rural organizations as well as our, city of Menominee. We also really foster training. So we do have sort of a training portal that we have access to. There's lots of different kinds of training. There's training for leadership. There's training for firefighters. There's training for emergency management, a lot of it is. And a lot of these things can involve all sorts of different types of discipline. We do try to put out the information about that, and most of the training is free to the student. So we are not charged anything that is covered by the organization that's putting it on. Quite often that is Wisconsin Emergency Management. There are a few others. And that is how we stay on top of things. That is how our departments can learn more as, technology just keeps going forward. And it's just really important for all of our responders to be able to have access to that training. Okay, grant funding. So, some of you may find this very, very boring, and that's okay, but we are driven by grants. We have, so these first 3 grants on here, these first 3, we do these every year. And they're very, very important to us, having the funding that we need in order to function as a department. The first one, Emergency Management Performance Grant. That drives probably 75% of the activities that we do. So our reviewing of plans, our exercises, outreach, and the IPP. So when I've talked about these things, we actually are required to do these things. Otherwise, we will lose out on our grant funding. And so that just really helps us stay on top of things. And it helps us, sort of not let things fall to the wayside. Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. That is our ECRA funding. And that is 100% focuses on hazmat issues. That is our hazmat offsite plans, our strategic plan, which is also primarily focuses on our hazmat. And there's also some outreach involved with that. And then every year we do our computer and hazmat response equipment grant. And it's basically a little grant that we work with our local fire department. So Menominee does have a Class B hazmat team. And because of that, we are eligible for this grant. Well, we're eligible for a little bit more of this grant. And it is about equipment that computer equipment that we can get as a department, and then hazmat-ish equipment for the fire department. And then at the bottom there we have our hazard mitigation grant. Again, we do that once every 5 years. The document is about 300 pages long, and it does take about 1.5 years to accomplish. So, and again, that is something that all the counties do every 5 years. We're thankfully on different sort of schedules, because that would be a lot for, and we have a planner that helps us out with that. And that will involve us getting out into the community, having some, going to different leadership and asking, going to different organizations and having an input into that, so. Okay.
So as Kristen has illustrated beautifully on the screen, what is an emergency and what is a disaster? And so she has the definitions up there, and basically an emergency, we have them every day, unfortunately. We just do within our community. We have different emergencies that we handle every day, and we handle those with our own local resources. And a disaster is an occurrence which results in significant damage to property and may involve death or injury. And it would exceed probably our local resources or our local capabilities within Dunn County. So disaster types, there's the natural disaster, and then there are man-made. And as I mentioned earlier, the natural disasters that we do have, you know, we have severe weather. We have, it can be the severe thunderstorm, high winds, that type. Blizzards, I know we've all, you know, if you've lived in Dunn County long enough, we've all been through some blizzard-like weather, and it's not that fun. And then there's the man-made disasters that we have, and you know, as we listed, sometimes it's a combination. It can be a combination. One can lead to the next. So Kristen is over there, and she's wanting us to guess some disasters, and I think she's going to write them down for us.
Yep.
So just want to go ahead and think of some disasters that you think could affect Dunn County, could affect our area. Go ahead.
You can just shout them out. Chemical spill.
Well, chemical spill, train derailment,
School shooting.
train derailment. Anything else that you think is a large threat to Dunn County?
Dam break.
Firestorm.
Firestorm?
Yeah, you can get them really dry periods and high winds.
Flooding.
There you go.
Flooding?
Including a dam break.
Yep. Flooding including a dam break and one that doesn't. I mean, each spring we do monitor our waterways here in Dunn County closely and just kind of, you know, see how the spring is going, the spring melt. And we thought for sure this year, the spring of '23, we were going to be okay. It didn't seem like we had, you know, too much snow, and it was kind of melting on and off. And all of a sudden, I think it was the second week in April, and we got into a little bit of trouble, and we did have some flooding, and one of our townships had some substantial flooding, and some of the roadways were damaged. And that picture on the left of the screen, my right as I look at it, is the township of Springbrook. And we did, like you said, we did have quite a bit of flooding down there this spring along the Chippewa River. So
Another one that could kind of fit in, say, with the storms and tornadoes, would be if you had a massive power outage.
Absolutely.
And or internet type outage.
Yes.
Yep.
absolutely, power outage is something that really affects everyone, and I think that we all take that for granted, that, you know, we're going to have power for our phones, to charge our cell phones, for our medical equipment, things like that, and it is a huge threat.
Pile up on the interstate due to foggy weather or bad weather, blizzard condition.
Yep.
Yep, it is a thing, and it's been a while, but we did have a rather large snow event several years ago, and we did have a lot of cars in the ditch. And I happened to be helping out in dispatch, or trying to help anyway. And we had officers and ambulance members just walking from car to car on the interstate, just trying to see if people were okay, because they couldn't get back into their squad cars to drive because everybody was stuck. It was a big, huge traffic jam. So yeah, it was a thing.
Homelessness.
Homelessness?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That definitely becomes a concern and can impact how we react to some of those things listed that Kristen has wrote down. Definitely, it does impact how we respond.
Somebody
And
said school shootings.
Yep, we have that up there as active threat.
Yep.
You know, it's definitely a concern in schools, but it's a concern in any agency. It can be anywhere.
Yeah. And this active threat is Yeah, any sort of violence, I guess, and we could sort of pull this apart into many, many different kinds of things, kind of along with the chemical spill too. So is that a fixed site, or is it a train derailment? Is it a tanker tipped over type of a thing?
You know, another one that kind of could fit in with firestorms. This past summer, we saw all this Canadian smoke,
Yes,
and which is really a health issue.
It
is.
Especially
Yeah.
people with, you know, breathing problems.
sure.
And that could go on for weeks.
Sure, yeah. There was definitely some conversations about exactly what you just mentioned and the concern for community members and also Dunn County employees who had to work outside during those time frames, and, you know, the level of air quality and what that was and how harmful that was. There were definitely conversations going on about that very topic. Yep,
Major water pollution can go in there too?
sure.
Good.
Yeah, 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 if our waterways are polluted.
We don't speak about it, but it's hidden and not so hidden, and it's countrywide, and it's terrorism by a large group of our own people. And so we ought to think about that,
Mhm.
because it's not unthinkable.
Right, right. We're not exempt from any of those things that have been mentioned in our community. Absolutely, absolutely.
Would it be okay if I just added a couple on here?
Please do.
She wrote a little big, but she's got extreme temperature. You know, that is a concern, and then it kind of bounces back to a few of those other things we have on the list too. Is it impacts our extreme temperatures can impact homelessness. Definitely that's a population that we have to be concerned about. I remember last December, right before Christmas, we had those bad storms where it was ice and then snow, heavy wet snow on top. And there were a lot of power outages. Dunn County fared a little bit better than some of our neighboring counties, but I know Chippewa and Eau Claire did have a large amount of people without power for several hours, some of them even into days. And, you know, that was definitely a concern that we talked about. And, you know, we talked about opening some shelters. Where do people go? So another one she added was nuclear. We do have a nuclear plant, not that far from Dunn County, over in Prairie Island, Minnesota. And we are what they call an ingestion county. So possibly could have some minor impacts, but we do train for that. We do exercises and you know, work directly with those people. And then winter weather, which we talked about, is a huge thing, and that's probably that in the severe weather in the summer is probably the first one people think of all the time, because we are impacted all the time by those types of things. And then we mentioned earlier, and she added cyber. Yeah.
I'm not a native up here, and so hearing about this nuclear plant that is nearby, it's kind of a first for me. Could you talk about that a little bit more? We're in an injection area?
Ingestion area?
Okay, and what does that mean?
So we're not in the nucleus of the threat zone, but we're just outside of that zone. And depending on where in Dunn County you live, so I don't have the map right in front of us, but off memory, if I know where that kind of ingestion circle is, if you live up by Sand Creek, you're actually out of that ingestion zone. So 3/4 of Dunn County is in the ingestion zone, and part of it is not, because it's just far enough away from that actual plant. Yeah.
What do you mean by ingestion?
We would breathe it.
So,
Yep.
well, what it, I think what it, here,
Sorry.
so why they call it an ingestion zone is, so the first 10 miles outside of the plant is like the emergency planning zone. The ingestion zone is 50 miles radius. Excuse me. And basically, and it's, as it sounds, ingestion. That could mean that our plants, our food, our water, so if something were to go wrong, there's a lot of people making sure that it doesn't, but if there were to be fallout, which in the movies, right, is when it looks like it's raining gray snow, those particles are radioactive. And when those particles land, they would land on our water, our trees, our animals, anything that's outside. So ingestion means it's a threat to what we would eat. So hence ingestion.
Or breathe. Okay.
Yes, and it comes down to sort of once the fallout has settled, it would be like laying on all surfaces basically. So that's where the term ingestion comes from, and it's a threat to what we put in our mouth. And so there would be a lot of testing going on to figure out when the radioactivity has settled, has stopped. But yes, that's why it's called we are in an ingestion zone.
And I would think west would be more, because of the prevailing winds, west would be more of a risk.
Possibly, and yes, I highly think that if something were to happen, that there would be the National Weather Service would be heavily involved in where wind speed, where things are going. But regardless, we are within 50, most of Dunn County is within 50 miles, so we would be in an ingestion zone, and we would be treated as such, and any response, I feel, would still take place regardless of wind speed or wind direction, because we would want to make sure that our waters, our animals, our livestock, everything was safe. But you're right, wind, you would think, but I can't fully answer that as in regards, because it's never happened, at least not here, so.
So drought and food shortage would be disasters too?
Drought is yes, and a food shortage, yes.
It's a disaster in the sense, but maybe not in the sense that we exercise for and plan for, if that makes sense.
Well, that brings up the pandemic, COVID. I mean, do you plan for those?
We have, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely been some planning done and some exercising done. Several years ago, I remember attending an exercise up in Barron County for, a pandemic involving the poultry that Barron County's famous for. And so, we participated in an exercise up there. And, fast forward several years, and we did have some issues with poultry again this past year. So, yeah, so we do work on all kinds of disasters and planning and exercise. And yes, absolutely, I don't think that we had that exact pandemic that we exercise or plan for, but definitely all kinds of different ideas like that, not just, severe weather and things like that. Mm-hmm. So some of our office roles that we have going on before an event, and there's a little picture of our office, we're weather aware. We're constantly monitoring the weather, what is going on for severe weather, but then also, just as you mentioned, wind speed, what's going on outside of our area that the weather may impact us. we're working on memorandums of understanding, just so we have some documents, some plans in place with different things, some shelters, people to help us with sheltering, with food, with, you know, all kinds of things. Outreach as of things today, that's what we work on a weekly basis in our office. Exercising and drills, as I mentioned, we do those all the time. Not just, you know, on major topics like a pandemic, but just exercises and drills with different computer programs and things that we use too. The state is really good at involving us in all of those things. And then reviewing and working on all of those plans we talked about earlier. So that's kind of what we're doing before an event, is basically planning. And all of those things up there is what we do to plan. During an event, we're monitoring, like we talked about, power outages. We're, you know, always in touch with our local power companies. How many outages do we have? What's the, you know, the estimated time that you believe you're going to have power restored to our community members, things like that. Monitoring the dispatch center and their activities that they have going on, what has been reported, blocked roadways, injuries, damage to buildings, different things like that. A lot of that information does come in through the 911 center, but Dunn County is an interesting area in that a lot of people take care of their own things and they don't always notify 911 or call 911. We've had a couple times where, you know, Kristen and I'll kind of go over any information that the 911 center has received after a storm, and we don't really see anything, and then we hear that, you know, so-and-so lost their garage by a huge tree. Well, in Dunn County, they're resilient. Their neighbors come over, you know, they help chop down the tree and, you know, patch up the roof, and they never even notified us, which is fine. You know, if you don't need assistance, you don't need assistance. But, you know, it can be a little tricky that we think, well, that storm wasn't that bad. Well, actually, there was probably 7 or 8 homes that might have been affected, but like I said, Dunn County, you know, community members just pitched in and took care of it themselves. So we anticipate and provide for the needs of our responders and the affected population during an emergency. Yeah.
Well, I assume that most people have not been through major disasters in the recent past. However, the one I remember that we all went through that were here in, was it 1980 or 81 in the summer?
Mm-hmm.
That was really, that was a community-wide disaster that I felt was handled really well. I think we did have to get the National Guard in to help us out. We had so many trees across the roads and in houses, and power was out for 6 days in some parts of town. And
yeah,
it was interesting to see how people went around and did things and helped
they
out.
did. It was a great, you know, a great show of what our community members are made of. I remember we were probably a little bit larger farming community back then, and I remember the generators going from farm to farm, kind of coordinating, you know, who was going to be using what generators to milk their cows and to keep those, you know, those farmers moving every day. And it really was a well laid out plan to keep everybody going and to get it all cleaned up and get everybody restored.
Well, all the chainsaws were out of town,
Yeah.
so my parents in the cities drove us a chainsaw out of the city.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are you talking about a tornado here? Some of us weren't here in 1980.
It was considered a straight line winds. Yeah. It was devastating. It really touched a large portion of Dunn County. It was not just Dunn County. It was kind of western Wisconsin was affected by the whole thing. So yeah, it was definitely a major event. We've had some smaller tornado touchdowns maybe that have affected a small area. We've been very fortunate that way. So yeah, knock on wood. So yeah, it impacts the community, but it's maybe just a little bit smaller scale. But definitely the July 15th, 1980 storm is one that, you know, we'll all always remember because it was large and it affected a huge number of people. So some other things. That's okay. we're updating Web EOC. So remember how I talked about how we have a regional director? Definitely, anytime we have anything going on in Dunn County, we update her, but we do so on what we call Web EOC, and here's a picture of that. And this just kind of illustrates what is going on in the county, in your county, and then the state level emergency management employees can take a look at this and see what is all going on within the different regions and then the different counties, like which ones are impacted by this storm. It might not be every county, but they can get a pretty good picture of what's going on throughout the entire state just on this one software program.
And just so you know, what we want out of this is for everything to be green. This green color, no, nothing, we're all good, fine. And please note that this was after we did a drill. This is not real.
Yeah.
This was not.
Like I said, we did drills. It doesn't necessarily mean an exercise in person. This was, you know, the state sent out a message and then we all kind of followed along or played along with our software program. So they could see who was, you know, who was reporting and who wasn't. So Kristen, I think, has participated a couple of years in this drill, and it's really a good thing.
Yeah, and I have never seen it look
Like this.
Like this. So, and sometimes we use this as, sometimes our Lisa, who's our regional director, will say, we're supposed to get this kind of storm tonight, this is supposed to happen. Will you please all report by tomorrow morning at 9? Because it sort of top loads, and then if we all say no, 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 then she knows that we're good. So that she has a picture, not just that, you know, the three of us all got blown away by the storm and there's nobody to put anything in Web EOC. So sometimes putting in no is just, it just tells just as much as putting in yes, and this is what happened.
And it's kind of open to interpretation too. I mean, sometimes I think, well, if we have one or two roads washed out, you know, do we really need to put it on there because it doesn't seem as dramatic for us when you're looking at maybe La Crosse County, who is devastated. But still, it's good to know. It's good to know that, hey, Dunn County does have a few things, but they're handling it. They're good. After an event, we, you know, still are very busy. We take a look at the short and the long-term objectives of the event. We're always making sure that the health and safety of the individuals have been handled and work with the Red Cross. We've used 211, which is a facility that's available to Dunn County for reporting damage. So if we did have a major event and we can't handle everyone in Dunn County calling our office or calling the 911 center, we're definitely going to do some informational posts out on the media blasts to use 211. You can call 211 and they'll gather all that information for us. They'll get that information and then they'll send it to us. And they'll say, these are the people in your community that need help. They're not in danger right now, but this is what they need help with. And then we get that list and then we know where to go. We can always open our Emergency Operations Center, which is in our judicial building. I don't want to jinx ourselves, but we have not had to open it very often, I think a couple times, right? And then another thing that we're always working on is grant funding. During disasters, can we get funding to help the community build back? And everybody thinks, well, just if we have a tornado, that automatically makes us qualify for it, and that's not true. That is not true. There's definitely some guidelines, and it's definitely driven by the cost of replacing things, but just if we did have a tornado come through, it does not necessarily automatically make us eligible for FEMA funding. So, oh, okay, yeah. So we do a document that kind of sums up what we know of for damages within Dunn County, and we report that to the state. And it's just an estimate. So if 7 people have called and said their homes, the roofs are damaged, they're displaced, and we need to have that fixed before they can move back in, we'll kind of just estimate the damage that we have in several different categories. Debris, you mentioned the 1980 storm with the trees everywhere. Well, that took probably the highway shop and the township patrolmans that take care of the roads, that probably took them several hours. That's one of the categories we can report on. And then keeping people safe, protective measures, putting out road closed, water over roadway signs, things like that. And then definitely, like I mentioned, any damage to any building. So we estimate that and we turn that into the state so they know what's going on. And then as they kind of estimate all these counties that have reported, they're like, wow, the state of Wisconsin has $23 million worth of damage. We need to declare a disaster for the state of Wisconsin. So that's kind of where they get some of their information, is from us. The boots on the ground, people are reporting in. Some things that we use, and I talked about, our software programs. We have Salamander, which is kind of a credentialing software. We use that for our first responders as one identification. But then it's also a tracking tool. When we have large scenes like a disaster or a search for a missing person or things like that, where we're going to have several of our first responders on scene, we can definitely use this Salamander software program that we have to track who's all on scene, when did they show up, what equipment did they bring, one, to track it to make sure that everybody's going in and everybody's coming back out, but then also to track the cost of what we used, because it may be eligible for reimbursement. Another tool that we use is Cameo, Aloha, and Marplot, and Kristen is an expert on those. It's basically a computer program that helps us with plumes based on wind direction. If we did have a spill, how could that affect the area? What is in the area? So in the city of Menominee, if something happens here, are there schools affected? Are there daycares affected? Are there nursing homes in that area that we would need to evacuate and things like that? Another thing that we kind of use is the DNR has a spill reporting system. And that spill can be a large chemical spill, or it can be 5 gallons of diesel fuel. Someone, either had a mistake at the gas station or just overfilled, had a leaking tank. And so we do use the DNR spill reporting system. Weather, which we all know is a huge thing. There is notification system within our region that notifies us of different weather events in our area. 211, which I just mentioned, is definitely a tool for us to use during emergencies to report damages and things like that. And then Wisconsin Emergency Management is also always available for us. Spill reporting, we just talked about that with the DNR. If we have anything that, like I said, it can be as minor as gasoline, but if that is spilled, it is reported either to us or directly to the spill hotline, and we receive that information through them. It always talks about what would be the impact to the citizens of Dunn County, or the impact to the environment. We can't just have the diesel fuel laying in the ditch that needs to be cleaned up. Could it create a different type of safety hazard if we have, a chemical spill that's not cleaned up? So.
Groundwater contamination.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So we have the number 12 under reported spills in 22. And again, that could be something that one of our facilities that Kristen talked about earlier, our planning facilities, had a spill, or it could be as simple as, manure is also considered a hazardous material spill because it can contaminate, like you just said, the waterways. So one of those numbers very, very well could be just a larger manure spill. Either someone, had an accident and it was spilled on the highway, or some sort of leakage. So we have 12 that we have down for 22. That number does fluctuate a little bit each year. Off-site planning, we talked about what our off-sites are. We listed some of those things. We basically create a plan. In that plan, we have a map of the facility and also a map of our community, and we determine the vulnerability zones and what is in there. Is it the schools? Is it the nursing homes? What is in that area that we may need to know about if there is an emergency? And then we share that information with our hazmat team and our firefighters in that area. We review those at least every 2 years. Dunn County does, we don't have a ton of them, so we like to at least put our eyes on them once a year, I'd say, on some things. We may not go through the whole planning process every year, but we have a local emergency planning committee. It's made up of elected officials, some of our law enforcement officers, firefighters, health professionals, transportation. We have someone from the media is on our team, different community members, and then owners or operators of the facilities in Dunn County. And we meet twice a year. We go over some of the plans that Kristen has reviewed and updated, and we talk about other things that possibly could be some vulnerable areas in our county. And anything else that was major, really just, we just talk about what's going on in our community and how those facilities could impact. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to hand the microphone off to Kristen. She's going to talk about how we're going to be prepared to handle some of these emergencies. And it can be as simple as just what we prepare for in our home, but then also maybe what we prepare for as our community.
All right, so I'm going to be trying to be really mindful of the fact that you guys may have questions at the end, so I might go through some of this a little bit quickly. So, and I realized on the way here, this should not say, why should everyone be preparing, because it sounds kind of mean and forceful. I will change that for the next one, just so you know. But why? You're right. Okay, there we go. It just makes events less scary. If you have some preparedness items at home, scary things are going to happen. We cannot prevent them all. So if you are a little more prepared, whether that is with physical preparedness items or just knowledge about your area, it just makes things a little less scary. Making decisions under stressful situations is stressful. So if you are experiencing a power outage and there's no lights and you are babysitting your grandkids and they're all, it just, if you have some things in place, then you have a first step and then you can have a second step. Preparing for natural or man-made disasters prepares you for personal disasters. We all have them. Sometimes I have several a day. So, just having some sort of a backup plan to what you think is actually going to happen is really, it's a good idea. It is beneficial to your community. If you are prepared, we'll just use a power outage to sort of give us a place to, a talking point. If you have a flashlight, and if you can have let's say it's 32 degrees outside, and your house is going to get colder and colder and colder. If you have a flashlight, you have some blankets, and you are prepared for that, that leaves the people who are not prepared or who cannot prepare, allows responders to respond to them. And it's not as difficult as people think. And hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that. Okay, challenges. Money, always money. You know, it can be perceived as a waste of time, a waste of resources. You don't know what you're preparing for. How do you possibly do this? And what are we preparing for? Well, generally when you are preparing, it was going to look like kind of the same thing regardless of whatever event is going to happen, okay? So the bad news is you will never be fully prepared for all disasters. You just can't be. You can be very prepared, but you can't plan for everything. So we have to have good news, right? The good news is you will never be fully prepared for disasters. The pressure is off here. This isn't about getting to some certain level and being like, we've done it, we've accomplished it, we will survive everything. That's not what it's about. It is a process, okay? So how do we start? How do we start being prepared? Well, you already started because you showed up here today. Something brought you here. You learned something. Maybe you're thinking a little bit more about disasters. Maybe you have a better understanding. Okay, so we've already started. Here's just a basic list of different things that you can and maybe should have around to help prepare for whatever may come our way. This is a common list. We do have some brochures in the back that would also list all of these items. I'm not going to go through every single one specifically. I do want to highlight just a couple. Water. It's always a good idea to have some water on hand, whether we have a massive power outage, whether our water becomes contaminated and becomes undrinkable or unusable. For water for drinking and washing. Okay? Flashlights and batteries. A flashlight is the best thing, in my opinion, you can have against whatever may be coming our way. It's simple, it's easy, and people know how to operate them. I did actually see something the other day that talked about teaching your kids how to put batteries in. And I was really upset by that. It was like, but then I thought, you know what? How many young kids put batteries in anything? Because everything is done on their phone. So, make sure you know how to put the batteries in. Okay? A radio. If our communications are harder, whether that is the power outage, there's been a tornado, we always resort to our phones. There's going to be a time when your phone isn't not going to function the way you hope it would. So, having a small battery-operated radio, this does not have to be a big, convoluted thing. It can be a $10 little thing you buy from Walmart. Okay? A couple of other things that I want to highlight. Cash. Yesterday, did anybody get a notice that their deposits would be delayed to their bank? No? Okay. I didn't either. But it was on the news, and several banks reported that deposits would be delayed, meaning your paycheck would not be instantly available to you for whatever reason. So that's interesting.
Was that in the state or in the county?
Somewhere in the United States. I don't know. I'm not saying it was necessarily here, but I'm saying there's some people.
Fargo or US Bank and stuff.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That their deposits aren't made.
Right, and there again, that is just a computer glitchy problem. But that would really not be good. Is that an emergency? It's a little bit of an emergency. For some people, that would be a disaster. So try to have a little bit of cash on hand, and again, this isn't about emptying out your entire savings account and putting it under your mattress. This is about, if it's possible for you to have a little bit of cash on hand for even something like that. Books and games. The power goes out, you have children. They're so great when they're bored and scared, right? Having something to do, having something to maybe distract you from what is happening, having something that doesn't need to be plugged in is a great resource. A deck of cards, a couple of books that you bought from the used book sale library here a couple weeks ago, you can get them for $0.25 a piece, right? So this isn't a huge investment, but having something to occupy your brain can be very, very helpful, okay? So let's talk about really what that statement is. So what's up with the 3 days? Is emergency management trying to tell you you shouldn't plan for 4, 5, or 6 days? No. There's specific reasons about why we say for at least 3 days, okay? Honestly, we're just hopeful the event is over. That is the best thing. The power is back on, everybody has a safe place to be, it's over. However, if it is not over, understand that if we have a citywide power outage, everybody's going to be looking for the same types of things. Food you don't necessarily have to cook, charcoal so you can cook on your grill, water. Everybody's going to be needing those exact same things. So if you can have 3 days worth of supplies at home, that just provides time for suppliers to maybe reconfigure that. And yes, I'm talking about Walmart, Quick Trip, Fleet Farm. Provide a period of self-sufficiency to wait for the response. So when I say wait for the response, I mean exactly whatever that might be. This might be we're just waiting for the power to come back on. It could be something significantly more impactful. So if you just have some self-sufficiency, that provides time for those things to kick in. So some of those things might be just for garbage services to come around, debris removal. Responders will need to have a full picture of what is actually going on. Things might look really bad, but then once you actually just pick up all the trees off the road, maybe it's not so bad. It could go the other way as well, but just give us time to kind of get that figured out. Allow time for first responders to maybe activate some mutual aid agreements. So let's say we have a tornado and it comes through Dunn and goes right into Eau Claire County. And they are experiencing the same things. We're not going to call Eau Claire and be like, hey, could we borrow this? Can you spare some people? No, because Eau Claire is going to have their own problems. We're going to call Pepin. We're going to call St. Croix. We're going to call these other counties to pitch in and help. And we're going to contact our nonprofits. Number one, Red Cross. Red Cross is a huge resource. We also have another team that maybe you're unaware of. It's called Team Rubicon. And Team Rubicon is a volunteer group that are more of a highly skilled tradesman type. So Team Rubicon is the chainsaw operators. They are driving end loaders. They are hammering things back together. So, and it just gives us time to plan for short and long-term recovery. Whether that is just us getting things cleaned up. We can do this, we're Dunn County, because we can. But if it can't, then the other counties pitch in. And if the other counties are having just as much problem, then WEM steps in. Wisconsin Emergency Management. And if it gets beyond that, then we're going to get a hold of FEMA. But it all starts with each individual township and village, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. Our response is to facilitate the severity and the size of the disaster. So now what do? Well, we already talked a little bit about this. Know our risks and hazards, so we've listed some over there. Oops. So next, when we're talking about preparing, know you. So what do I mean by that? So know your specific location. Does your area flood? Are you out in the country? Are you in the city? Is your house 3 stories? Is your house on the 3rd floor? All of those things are going to be specific to each and every one of you. And a little bit you have to kind of decipher some of those things so that you can be prepared, so that it suits your needs, okay? Know your household composition. What does that look like? Do you have young children? Are there older people in your home? Do you have people with disabilities? Do you have people that need assistive devices? All of these things should really play a factor into how you are preparing, okay? And how you prioritize how you prepare. And yeah, I gotta bring it up. You gotta know your strengths and your weaknesses or your challenges. Does the location of your home, is that a challenge? Do you flood almost every year? And what if we have a really big flood? What does that look like? Okay. And once you do start preparing and understanding the need to prepare, communicate with your friends and family. Meaning, if you have to evacuate your home, will your friends and family know where you went? Do you have a plan in place? Maybe you won't have a choice. Maybe there will be a center where everybody is going. But communicate with your friends and family. Let them know, this is what I plan to do if the power goes out. This is what I plan to do if there is a riot. This is what I plan to do. And sometimes our plans don't always go as well. But having some sort of starting point, that communication with your friends and family. So, next level, okay? Know your city, town, and village. Where do you live? What resources are there? Do you have a library? Would that be a meeting place if there was something, if a tornado blew through? What would that look like? Who is your emergency operations planner for the city or village or town that you live? Do sirens go off? What do those sirens mean? Do they go off daily? Do they go off every Monday at 10 o'clock? What do those sirens mean? Build a car kit. So many of us will be traveling. Have things in your car. We did talk a little bit about what if a bunch of people got stranded on the interstate and couldn't get off. That's an issue, especially if it's very, very cold out. Build a car kit. Have some food, have some water in your car. Know your route and know your destination. So you leave Menominee, so another newsflash is you live in Wisconsin. So 15 minutes from now, the weather might look very, very different, right? So if you're going someplace that's 4 hours away, you leave, and it looks like this outside. But what is the weather like in the place that you are going to? What does the weather look like on your trip? You know, we have a lot of things now that allow us to look at that, and it's not just about having an app on your phone. You can access this information pretty easily. 511 is a great, also lets you know if there's any road construction or things going on that way. Write it down. So if we have these plans in place, and we're going to call this person and this person and this person and this person if something happens, and your phone doesn't work, can you borrow somebody's phone to call these people? Or do you have absolutely no idea what their phone number is because it's in your phone? So write these important information down. Phone numbers, addresses of friends and family, possible insurance information. Prepare for storms. If they start announcing that we're going to have a really bad storm, a really bad winter storm, can you delay your plans? Can you use an alternative route? Can you leave early? can you leave later? If they're predicting really high winds, can you take your patio furniture down? Can you take your umbrella down so it doesn't blow into your neighbor's window or something like that? Be weather aware. And maintain your preparations. If you do decide to have some food put away, and you're going to put them, in your safe place in your home, rotate that food out once every 6 months. And of course, this is not a waste. So if you were to put some food into like a Rubbermaid bin, and this is your food for storms, rotate that out and then just eat it. It doesn't have to be just for a storm. And then replace it and then eat those. Next level is be kind. Events can be very, very scary, and sometimes that gets really hard. We did have active threat up there too. I do feel that just being kind is actually an act of preparing. I know sometimes it's very hard. There are days when I'm not kind. There are days when I should have just stayed home. But being kind and trying to be helpful during an event can go a long way. Go the extra mile. You can volunteer. You can volunteer in your community just because you want to volunteer. You can also volunteer during times of events. Different things are happening. Spread the good news of preparedness. Encourage your friends and family to be prepared. Encourage them to buy that flashlight. Encourage them to watch the weather. Be aware. Encourage them to have extra supplies in the house. And then really go the extra mile. Work as a responder. Support people who want to work as a responder or a firefighter, law enforcement, Red Cross. As a point of interest, our Red Cross representative was in Hawaii a while back, and our Red Cross representative is an extremely well-traveled human. So, it can be interesting. All right, so we're almost done. Quick tips. When it storms, grab your shoes. If the windows break, there's going to be glass all over the floor, have a pair of shoes. Food, water, and shelter discussion. We've heard this, food, water, shelter, which one is most important? And in the interest of time, I'm going to say it's shelter. Because in the loss of the functionality of your shelter is probably the emergency. I'm not saying don't find water, but get to a place where you are safe and warm or cool, depending on the temperature outside. Do not 100% rely on your phone. And so many of us are saying, my phone can do this, and it can do this, and it can do this, and it can do this. Well, in emergency management, we really are interested in knowing all the things you can do without your phone. Use and manage your resources wisely. If you are asked to evacuate or shelter in place, please do so. This will keep you and your family safe, and also for the interests of our responders. If you are doing the evacuation or the shelter in place, you are no longer on their to-do list, and it allows them to go do the other things that they need to do to get rid of the threat, whatever that may be. After an event, assess what went right and what didn't. If the power was out for 3 days and you just really needed a book, you really, really needed a book. Get a book into your preparedness pack. Figure out what would make you more comfortable during this time. What you actually maybe really, really needed. And all these things are great, and all this is wonderful, but it does not trump the last thing that I'm going to ask you guys to do. Does anybody want to take a guess as to what that is? Learn. Learn new skills. Learn anything. Learn how to start a fire. Learn how to cook outdoors. Learn how to crochet. Learn anything that just empowers you. And these can all be like survivability things. They can be, but they don't have to be. So just take the time to learn new skills. All right, that's it. We do have some time for questions if anybody has any questions.
You know, this is all good that you showed. Could I just share something that happened to me about 8 years ago in our community that I used to live in?
Sure.
Could I use the microphone so I know?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived in southern Utah for 7 years. And this would have been probably 2013, 2014. And I was asked to help with, kind of ties in with a lot of this. And within the city was about 4,500 people, 4,000. And they had, and I don't know exactly the right organization of it, but they divided the cities up into sections, and that's, for sake of discussion, I'll use wards, like a ward. And then, so like there was a ward captain, and then the ward person went and he said, well, we have blocks of people here, there, and everywhere. And I was asked if I would do our little block. And as I'm sitting here thinking about this, it's probably 15 houses that I was, I'll use the word responsible for, but to get information from. And so they gave me a chart, all right? So I went around, I knocked on doors and called people, and I interviewed all 15 of those. And it was like, well, so you'd ask questions. If there was an emergency, they want to know, like, might you have a chainsaw? Yes, no, whatever. Might you have a little power generator? You know, 5 kilowatts or whatever. Might you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You go through who had equipment. And do you have any, okay, your job is whatever, I do such and such. Do you have any special skills? And someone might say, yeah, when I was in the military, I was a medic. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
And so there was this whole litany of people within, say, my neighborhood that I got information on. Well, then they took this information and it went into the ward. And then the ward went into the city. So now they had a whole, and this was all individuals, helping individuals.
Yep.
And they had this whole list of people who had skills and equipment and you name it. And I found it quite interesting, personally, in doing this. There was only one individual, he refused to help anybody. He said, I can take care of myself. No, I'm not going to help anybody else, and I don't want their help. All right? Just 1 out of 15. So you're going to have that. But I found it was all resurrected sitting here listening to you. It was all resurrected in my memory. And so it's something that I don't know how it all, it seemed to die on the vine, but maybe it didn't, because I remember saying, well, we're going to have another meeting in a year. And it didn't happen. I mean, at least I wasn't involved. But they could take that information, let's say it was in this small town, and so let's say Menominee were to do it, and then Wheeler had a problem. The storm went through Wheeler. Maybe say, well, Menominee has a network of people who can come and help. You know, there can be, it's more of a neighborly thing as opposed to a government thing.
Right.
And so I just thought I'd share that, and maybe food for thought.
Very good information.
Yep. And,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm just, in response, I think in some respects, health done right is that at a different level and different scale. And the action teams that are out working in the community are gathering that information and putting it in the pamphlets and online, which I think should help everybody.
Yeah, and you know, you don't necessarily, and that sounds good and great, but you can also just be like, do you know your neighbors? Do you know somebody?
Not as much as we did probably back in 2013.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, and so just sort of, you know, you don't have to be, you know, we all have neighbors that we maybe are not best friends with, and that's okay. But sometimes just knowing, you know, say, oh, Bob is an electrician. Oh, that would be really helpful, you know, or so-and-so, you know, used to fix windows for a living or something like that. All of our skills might sort of culminate into something being helpful. And yeah, just again, sort of know your location. That I should have included, know your neighbors.
There's a counterculture in this society that I've watched develop, which is carry a pistol, be armed. That's not good. Because what you're asking, and the only way society works, is for one to help the other, not steal from the other. But watch out, that is also, there's a risk, and it's growing, and you see it when teenage kids are shooting each other. It tells you how many of these things are out there. And if you go out to the rifle range or the pistol range, you'll see a lot of ordinary people whose wives are learning to shoot. And when you drive in heavy traffic, watch out, because the guy that you pissed off may have a pistol.
I think
So
that
it's another part of
it just leads back to what I just said about his 2013, 2014 experiences is we're a different society today, maybe than we were 10 years ago, and I think that's very intriguing what you did out in Utah, and I think that probably was a very good thing, but it's just different today. We don't neighbor like we used to. We don't community probably like we used to. You know, and I'm guilty of those things myself. I live in the rural, you know, and anybody within a 5-mile radius is considered my neighbor, because when you live out in the rural, that's just kind of how it is. But you know, I don't know my neighbors as well as I probably should have, or as well as my parents knew our neighbors when I was growing up, and that's just part of the change in society. And you know, but I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think sometimes when we have those disasters that Kristen wrote on the flip chart, is sometimes we do let some of that go, and we become neighborly again, and we become a community, and we do help out. You know, I think we can all get busy in our daily routines, and we think, well, we're going to take care of ourselves, like you're one individual. I got mine, and I'm fine. But I think, you know, I'd like to think when the chips are down, the neighbors are going to come back out, and we're going to help, and the community's going to come back out, and we're going to do it together. But all of those things are right. All of those things have changed, and it is a different society. But you know, if we each can do our own part, and you know, and like Kristen said, you may not have the best relationship with every one of your neighbors, but it just takes a small network, and eventually that network will grow. Any other questions, or?
Are you gonna share, or could Lorene share this slideshow if you have?
You want me to do that?
Yeah, we can send messages out.
I mean, because there's a lot of good little tips in there.
Yeah, we can get some of that together and send it out to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just send it along with my summer.
Sure.
There's also, you know, some things in the back there. There's lots of brochures that a lot of the stuff was sort of drawn from. And there are a lot of online resources. FEMA, well, ready.gov, and also Ready Wisconsin are great resources. And there you can have sort of a physical thing, you can print the information off. There's communication cards you can print off. There's lots of tips, tricks, ideas, things that we don't necessarily have the time to put, you know, every single thing into this presentation because we would be here all day.
When some things interest you a little bit more than the next person, and so, yeah. So those are all good resources, but we do have some pamphlets, feel free to take those. We have some little giveaways, feel free to take some of those things if you need them. And always you can reach out to our office too if you have questions. That's what we're there for. It's our outreach, it's our.
What's your number? Just call Dunn County?
Well, you can call 715-232-2333 is Kristen's number. And my office number is 715-231-2982.
I worked a few years ago at the hospital as a communication operator, and you guys did an emergency management training, I think, or maybe it was an exercise. I think it was at Cedar Brook, and it was supposed to be like a mass casualty thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was like 4 ambulances hauling multiple people, and it was really, I don't know if it got out in the news, but it was really interesting to experience it on that side of it, but even as a citizen, it's kind of interesting to know that you guys are even practicing for such things, so.
Yeah, that was a handful of years ago, and I think that was an active threat. Yep, that we practiced with, and it's always good. We always learn so much, and honestly, the first thing that breaks down in any disaster or any exercise for that fact is communications.
I can hear you.
Sure.
Communications is one of the things that breaks down the first. You know, it's just one of those things. We physically, the communications, cell phones can be impacted, our radio system can be impacted, but then too, you know, everybody gets busy doing their own thing and they forget to communicate. They forget to notify other community members what we're doing, what we need, what we're going to be doing, how to involve them. So yeah, it's always a good thing to learn and do those exercises. Any other questions? Yeah.
Let's say less than 1% of the population is prepared at all. On what degree would it be necessary for them to prepare? Let's say 1 to 8 or 1 to 5 items. So what would you do about that if you even found that, if you could find that information out?
What would we do as an office to try and encourage people to prepare? Or
Well, make sure it was done. Let's say if you wanted 50% of the population to be prepared.
I think that's one of the things we're here today is outreach. You know, we try to get the word out. Social media, I know not everybody uses social media, but it is a good way to communicate with the public. So we use social media. We do events like this. The Dunn County Fair, we partner with the Sheriff's Office and use their booth to hand out some of our information. We have displays in different places throughout the community. As Kristen mentioned, we had training for young children, you know, start them young to learn, to want to learn about this. So that's what kind of the things that we do is what we call outreach.
So you can hope, but you can't make sure it's accomplished.
Right, yep, that's exactly it. It's really hard, and everyone has, you know, a different level. You might think having your water and your flashlight is good enough, and that's definitely going to be helpful. And then there are people who maybe have built, you know, shelters in the ground that they have prepared. You know, everybody has a different level, and unfortunately it is really hard for us to gauge that. Any other questions or comments today?
One more.
One more.
You mentioned when the food after like 6 months to rotate it out. What about water? Doesn't that potable water get bad?
Yes, I would rotate the water too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're storing it in the plastic containers, I would definitely do that.
Isn't there something with water, you just put a little chlorine in?
There is.
No, this is
Yeah,
second.
yep, there is. But, you know, I think she was mentioning like the plastic water bottles that we all go to Walmart and get in the cases, you know, that sits in that plastic. In the different temperatures within your home, that's something that I would definitely rotate out or store it differently. You know, store the water differently.
And what you are referring to about adding the little bit of chlorine or bleach, or there's a lot of different places that have information about things like that. And when you are looking into things like that, please don't just trust one source.
Be cautious.
Yes, there's a lot of information out there, and I think it's important for you to gather the information that you have and then sort of put it into action. Because there's some people that are just trying to do good, but maybe don't quite have all their facts, but then they're disseminating this information to other people, and some people are just maybe not good people. But
I think if you stick to the sites that Kristen mentioned earlier, ready.gov, you know, Ready, Wisconsin, those types of sites, they'll have lots of good information on those sites for you. Absolutely.
And yeah, so, I mean, I picked up a book here yesterday, and it's something like the preparing your home, how to be fashionable, and ready for
that's
anything.
important.
It is. Well, and it kind of made me laugh a little bit, but it was about making your home functional so that you can do the preparing that you want to prepare for. But it was, and the fashionable thing is not me at all. But there's a lot more information out there, and I think maybe even the pandemic did maybe push people to say, oh, you know what? Maybe I should do something. And, you know, like I said, every step that you take to be more prepared is wonderful. It's a good thing. It's good for you, it's good for your family, and it's good for your community.
And everyone has a different level of preparedness that they're comfortable with. So everyone has to, you know, do their own. Any other questions before we convene today? Thank you very much for coming out. We do appreciate it. It's always good to get our word out on one, what we do, and then two, what we would like you to do to kind of help us in those emergency situations. So thank you very much for taking your time.